What's up, YouTube? So today I finally decided to do something different. We are going to be looking at one of the unique items that GGG released. Now in this video, I'm going to be trying to switch to like a PowerPoint presentation method just to gather my thoughts better. And also because it seems like a lot of people have trouble following along if I just ramble along without any sort of guidance on the screen. So we're going to have a little bit of a class session, or not really class session, but you know what I mean. But basically, the reason why I decided to look at this item more closely is because this item could be pretty beneficial to Lightning Strike Berserker, which a lot of people who watch me do play, and also it pertains to a lot of Trinity Elemental builds, which are probably most of the best builds in the game. Now, this amulet is called Crystallized Omniscience Onyx Amulet. A lot of people in my chat did tell me it was pronounced OMNI-SCIENCE, but I decided to look on dictionary.com and it's actually Omniscience. So, yeah, that's how you actually pronounce it. Now, this amulet is quite a handful to understand. It took me looking on stream a little bit, and then we had to go into some discussions about what exactly counts as your bonus attributes. So we're going to do a deep dive into this amulet. Then we're going to go look at how it affects a top tier Lightning Strike Berserker POB. And if it actually beats out Uul'Netol's Vow. And the answer is yes. And it also gives you a bunch of resists. So let's go and see how good this amulet actually is. So let's start off the presentation. I don't even know why I made this first page because it's kind of useless because I already had an intro, but basically we're in the Path of Exile section and yada yada yada. Nice little picture of the amulet. But this is what everyone's here for. Crystallized Omniscience Onyx Amulet. So first line, you have modifiers to attributes instead applied to Omniscience. Now what this means is that bonus attributes give Omniscience instead of Strength, Dex, or Int, whatever you may have. And this means that you will no longer get the benefits of Strength, Dex, and Int. So when you go to the inside of the game, you can see here it says 2 Strength gives you 1 life, 5 Strength gives you 1% melee physical damage, 2 Int gives you +1 mana, 5 Int gives you +1 energy shield, and 1 Dex gives you 2 accuracy, and 5 Dex gives you +1% evasion rating. So you no longer get that. All of your attributes are converted to Omniscience. Now, another thing people will be wondering is what happens to the stuff on the tree. So all of this stuff will be converted to Omniscience. So this is +15 Omniscience, +15 Omniscience, and +40 Omniscience, and 8% Omniscience. So if you have this increased attributes, you might be wondering, do I get 15% Omniscience? And the answer to this is that you actually only get 5% Omniscience. And for Ashley mods, as you go into here, you go to the crafting bench, and you will see that there's a lot of mods like Dex and Int, Strength and Int, and Mark GGG confirm that this will only be considered 21 to 25 Omniscience, so you can't double stack it. So what does Omniscience actually give? Omniscience actually gives us 1% elemental resistance and 1% all elemental resistance per 10 Omniscience. So that means if you have 1000 Omniscience, you will have 100% all Ele res and 100% elemental penetration. And another thing to note is that characters have 60 base attributes, right? So when you sum together all of these stats, you have to subtract it by 60 because it only counts as bonus attributes. So it has to be attributes on your gear, on your tree, and it will not count your base character attributes. So now you might be wondering, when you have all of this Omniscience, how are you going to use any of your items? Well, GGG thought about that. So this next line says attribute requirements can be satisfied by 23% of Omniscience. So what this means is if you have 1000 Omniscience, you will have 230 stat requirements equivalent for Strength, Dex, and Int. So at 1000 Omniscience, you can pretty much use any gem or item with up to 230 Strength, 230 Dex, or 230 Int requirements. Now this is pretty much enough to do every single item in the game, including jeweled foils. The only ones you'll have problems with are like Cosprey's Malice, because Cosprey's Malice is, let's see, 212 Dex, well 257, so you'll pretty much be on the borderline of using this one. And Mjolnir, I think, is the main one that's the big issue, because this one has some insane requirements, 412 Strength, 300 Int, and then Garb of the Thermal is another one that has some insane requirements, 600 Strength, so you probably won't be using this chest, right? Now, another thing to note is that You could also use Catalyst on this and get 20% extra on this value. So the range, if I had to guess, is probably going to be from like 20 to 30% or 15 to 25, depending how generous they will be. But just know if you have like 800 attributes altogether, you pretty much do not need to worry about your stat requirements for any item. So now let's go over why do we actually care about this amulet. This amulet is mostly not for attribute stacking builds. Like, we're not really sure about how items like this, which says adds 1 to 80 chaos damage to attacks per 80 strength, if this will be per 80 omniscience. I don't know if Mark has come out and said it. But regardless, a lot of the attribute stacking builds will suffer an enormous downside without the strength bonus, right? So if you put a brass dome on this thing, technically, and you don't have, so you would lose strictly 1100 life. So this character will become a glass cannon, right? In stackers, the exact same thing. In stackers have around like 2000 int. They will literally lose 400% energy shield. And at that point, the character is losing a lot of its value. So even if Omniscience worked with attribute stacking builds, the defense loss will be too insane. The only attribute stacking build that could potentially work with it is definitely Dex Stacker. So I do think the amulet will have a lot more uses for builds like Lightning Strike Berserker. Now the reason why Lightning Strike Berserker is so good is because in our iteration of the build, we use Brass Dome. And guess what Brass Dome's downside is, right? Let's go look at Brass Dome PoE Wiki. Make sure to use PoE Wiki because it is actually the official wiki now. So Brass Dome, you can see that you don't... Wait. This is not even PoE Wiki. Oh my goodness, I got baited. How does... I'm an idiot. But basically, you can see here, Strength provides no bonus to maximum life. And that is perfectly fine for us because of the amulet, right? So the downside of Brass Dome is pretty much negated, or the Strength downside of the amulet is negated because we have Brass Dome, at least for the life portion. Now, we might be wondering how good is having like 80% elemental penetration. Well, this puts it at better than Uul'Netol's Vow. Uul'Netol's Vow, if you substitute in like elemental penetration gem is around only, I think it is, let's go check it out. Elemental penetration PoE wiki, be sure to not look at PoE fandom. I think there is actually a extension. So you can see here, this elemental penetration gem only gives you 28% elemental pen. Now, having this much penetration, so let's say you have like 800 all attributes combined, then you will have a much better gem than one extra link, and you'll also have more resist than Uul'Netol's Vow, although you will be missing out on some of the chaos res. So overall, this amulet is going to be a lot better. Now you have around 10% more damage. Now this is a very variable number. Also depends on how you might change around your tree, but this is just a very preliminary estimate when I did the POB, and we will do the POB on this video. And it also fixes a lot of resist issues. In Scourge, a lot of people use Scourge to get some resist on Red Blade Banner, Mark of the Elder Ring, and all sorts of different things, and maybe even on Brass Dome. And this amulet pretty much allows us to negate a lot of the loss of resist from Scourge. Now, one of the main problems once you try it out on POB is that you need to fix your accuracy issues because Dex and Precision Mastery. So on Dex, you can see that we gain accuracy rating. So if you take out all of that accuracy and you have around like 300 Dex, you lose around 150 accuracy. And then you also have this node right here, which is the Precision Mastery, which is absolutely insane. And so you have to make up around like 400 to 500 accuracy rating. Now that will be just like one suffix on an item, and you can definitely spare one suffix on a ring now because you are able to have a lot more resist, right? And lastly, this will also allow you to use the new jewel, unique jewel. So there was a new unique jewel called Melting of the Flesh, and this actually gives you a lot of max res, right? So this is the new jewel. It gives you, what's it called? Elemental resistances are limited by your highest maximum elemental resistances instead. Now, what this means is that if we're able to already fix the resist issues, we could technically run a purity, or we can take some max res on the tree or something like that, or even corrupt items to have plus 1% max res, or not max res on the tree. If you take like percent res on the tree, so if you take like the percent res right here, plus 1 maximum resistance, that might give you 1 extra one. I don't know what happened to the game right now, but basically Very, very strong. You could even run Purity of Fire, Purity of Fire, Purity of Ice, or Purity of Lightning to reach 90% all res. The important thing about that is when you're at 90% all res, each percent of all res that brings you closer to 90 is more and more efficient, right? So that is actually a huge, huge deal. So now let's go take a look at how this profile is with Lightning Strike Berserker. So for this Lightning Strike pop example, we're gonna go be looking at Dick Zerker, who got the best Lightning Strike Berserker gear, and this is week 4, so he's still using Uul'Netol's Vow before all of the 12-link sword shenanigans came out. So I imported it over to POB, and this is his POB. I removed some of the points and I configured it. For people wondering, this is the config you use so that you don't actually, so that everything is done correctly. So he has 30 Scorch and 12 Brittle. And now the magic begins, right? So we calculated it out. So this person has around 260, 283, 141. So that ends up being around 684 stats. So we're going to copy and paste this parameter in. We're just going to do it to 68%, penetrate 68% resistances. So you can see it's at 134 mil. Now you might be wondering, what about his current amulet? So we need to remove this amulet. So do we remember what the number was before we added in this stuff? So let's go back to the config. So this is where you could actually, so it's at 91 mil. So let's keep that number in mind. So 91 mil. You take this out, 142. How much does this actually? So this brings the damage from 91 mil to 142. But you have the amulet in here. You want to take it off, and let's just make a white Onyx Amulet, right? So Onyx Amulet. So you can see here that at this point, it's pretty much going to be guaranteed to be better because you anoint Panopticon back on. And this is at 99.869 mil. And the thing about this is that we need to remove, what's it called? We need to remove Trinity here. Uncheck this, put this in on Trinity instead. And you can see here, after doing these changes, we are at 110 mil. So what we ended up doing with this change is that we moved the gem out of here, so there's no more Trinity in there. We made the 6-link with Trinity instead of Awaken added lightning damage, which is what we always generally do. So you can see here the damage went up from 91 to 109 mil. Now you might be wondering, what about the attribute requirements that you would have? So you would just subtract by minus 276 strength, minus 299 dexterity, and then minus 157 intelligence. You see here the life stays the same at 4510. You see the damage might have gone down a little bit, but what you will end up doing in this case is you can see how this ring has 2 resistances. So because we have so much extra resistance now, we are able to probably get a plus 400 or 500% accuracy roll on the ring, right? So here we can see that we brought it up a little bit. So it's already 10% more, and you could probably fix it and get accuracy elsewhere. Now, this is pretty much a scenario where you can see that this amulet is clearly going to be better, even with an example like this, right? So this is just a very basic plug and play, and this is not even accounting for the fact that you would change the tree around, right? So if you took item nodes like this, you might even end up getting more damage, although there is a huge diminishing value on pen. So now let's see the final thoughts about what we have here. So split personality will end up giving like 10% LE pen and 10% all res if you put it in a good place, depending on your build, right? So theoretically, if you put a split personality, let's just say you had a split personality over here, right? This split personality is gonna be crazy for this build, right? We already know that, right? So let's say split personality. Whoa, what is going on here? You put in strength, and then you put in dex, and then you add to the bill. So let's see how much do you think we'll get? I bet you could get like 50, 60. Wow, that's pretty far, right? So this will give us, it's only gonna give us what? 46, 56. Well, it's not too bad, right? 46, 56, so it's around 100. So it is around like 10% pen or so and 10% all res. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that this is better for builds that hover below 1,000 total bonus attributes. There is a huge diminishing return on penetration, as you can see. So you can see here This is the efficiency of 10% resist versus the monster's resist. So as you pen the boss so that your considered resistance for the boss is lower and lower, each 10% pen becomes less and less effective, right? So it's not going to be super, super good to be stacking attributes to like 1,000, 2,000 for stacking sake, right? When you start stacking that much, you lose out a lot on other stats on your gear or mods on your gear that could benefit more for damage, like attack speed or multi. So that's pretty much my 2 cents about it in terms of relating to the Lightning Strike Berserker. It will probably be a boss drop unique. If it's not a boss drop unique and it's a global drop and it's super, super rare, then hopefully it's cheaper than Uul'Netol's Vow. It is hard for me to see a world where it is more expensive than Uul'Netol's Vow, which ended up being like 150x at one point in the league. And this is a very, very strong amulet. I'm very happy that it's better than Uul'Netol's Vow. I'm very happy that it allows you to build the character in a lot more different ways, to customize it how you see fit. And it's actually a perfect use case scenario for our Lightning Strike Berserker. It's also probably very, very strong for almost any builds that needs elemental penetration and struggles on resists, and you can pretty much make it work for any of those builds. So this item is absolutely insane, and I do think that I will definitely be playing with it next league. So thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed this video format and if you are going to be using this new amulet. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you find more Mage Bloods, Exalts, and Squires than me, and see you next time. Bye!